This content is brought to you by Link2, which makes private equity investment easy. Link2 allows you to get access to companies before they go public, before they do an IPO. Within their portfolio includes fintech companies, artificial intelligence companies, as well as crypto companies. Some of the big crypto companies in their portfolio include Circle, Ripple, Polysign, Chainalysis, Dapper Labs, Ledger, and many more. So it's a great way to diversify your portfolio to get access to equity. So you may invest in crypto, stocks, ETFs, but now you can get access to equity in these companies before they go public. And obviously that can be very beneficial from an ROI standpoint. So if you'd like to learn more about Link2 and diversifying your portfolio, please visit the link in the description. Welcome back to the Thinking Crypto podcast, your home for cryptocurrency news and interviews. With me today is Karen Ottoni, who is the Senior Director of Ecosystem and Strategic Initiatives at the Hyperledger Foundation. Karen, it's great to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and talk to you.
Well, Karen, I've heard a lot about the Hyperledger Foundation for years. I've seen the Hyperledger Foundation mentioned, or Hyperledger Fabric mentioned, on Amazon's website, and I've seen you guys working on different projects. And I've always been curious because it's something that it's not really part of the open crypto market per se, because it's a private blockchain and network and so forth. So I want to ask you a ton of questions about what you guys are doing. Well, let's start with your background. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, and where'd you grow up?
Okay, sure. I am originally from Brazil, which is relevant now just because it's very exciting to me about what's going on with Brazil and the CBDC announcement that they've been making. But I grew up here in the US, have lived a little bit everywhere. We just connected on living in Brooklyn. And my background is completely non-technical. So I'm one of the ones who just came in, got really excited about what was happening in blockchain. My background is in international development, international relations. That's what I went to school for. I used to live and work abroad. I've traveled and lived in East Africa, working on US government-funded projects there. So that was my other life. Then I went to school, and during my MBA, when I was looking for what I wanted to do next, I really wanted to do something that kind of still had a mission focus. Like I still wanted to be a part of positive change in the world, right? Which is why I did my previous work, but with like a business focus. And I just so happened to talk to someone who was working on blockchain, and they started talking about Bitcoin. And I looked up the Wikipedia for Bitcoin and was like, this is interesting. And then ended up joining his team. So that's when I went to Tata Consulting Services, where we were really in 2016, just kind of getting people socialized on like, what is blockchain? What is this new technology? So I did a lot of workshops and training there. And then from there, I moved to Hyperledger. I've been at Hyperledger for about 5 years or so.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned someone told you about Bitcoin. Did you end up investing in it, or just more studying it?
At that time, when I joined Tata, I did do a little bit. I think I kind of came in where it was like $600. But I did not put my life savings, so it's not like that's grown a ton, but so I'm not Bitcoin rich, but it's fun to have gotten in early and watch things grow here and there. But I was out of grad school. I didn't have any money to put into it.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, one could still consider you as an OG, because man, a $600 Bitcoin under $1,000, that's pretty rare,
Yeah, I remember it.
So tell us about Hyperledger. There's a lot of people who haven't heard about Hyperledger, and maybe you can tell us about the history. What is it? How does it work, and so forth?
Yeah. So, when people probably hear about Hyperledger, they've heard about it being used in its applications, right? Like a supply chain example or something like that. most likely have heard about Fabric potentially. And so often people think it's a product and it's one technology.
Mm.
And I have the privilege of telling people what we really are about, which is we are an open source foundation that is part of the Linux Foundation. So we draw upon the 20 plus years experience that Linux Foundation has in running open source projects. And instead of it just being one technology, we are about 15, 16. I'm actually not sure right now because it changes regularly. Open source projects that are doing a variety of things in this DLT space. So some of those things are technologies that are at layer one, distributed ledgers. So Fabric is one of them, but we also have Hyperledger Besu, Hyperledger Roja, Hyperledger Sawtooth. These are all layer ones that can do any sort of blockchain use case. And then we have different tools and libraries that build on top of that, we have a verifiable credential, a non-creds project that you can use in digital identity. It's a standard for digital identity projects. So there's a lot that can be done. And our goal is really to advance enterprises' ability to use this technology in ways that further their businesses and further their goals. And so the way Hyperledger Foundation started was a group of companies coming together. It was about 25 or so. It included JPMorgan, Digital Asset, DTCC, players that are still active today, and a number of others like IBM. And they came together and said, hey, we need this. There's this Bitcoin blockchain thing going on, and we want to leverage this for business. How can we do that? It needs to be built in the open. We can't do this all on our own. And so that was sort of the seed for the start of Hyperledger Foundation at the end of 2015. And since then, we've really played this role of kind of being in this in-between of the like permissionless crypto space, right, with cryptocurrencies, and the more permission space where enterprises are operating, and now and kind of trying to pull the two together and see how they can benefit from each other.
Yeah, appreciate that overview, and some big names involved in starting this: JPMorgan, IBM, as you mentioned. So a question for you: Linux. Is this the same Linux, the operating system, the open source operating system that goes back years? Like I've used Ubuntu years ago, and is this the same Linux that we're talking about here?
Yes. So Linus Torvalds, who invented Linux, is still an employee of the Linux Foundation.
Wow.
And it started with that. He made that technology openly available for anyone to use, which is what catalyzed a lot of the computing industry we know today. Because it was openly available. And so that's really a deep part of our philosophy. Now Linux Foundation hosts many other open source projects. We are one of them, focused on like the DLT blockchain space. But there's others that are on cloud computing, all kinds of other things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Linux has a long huge pedigree in operating systems and anything computer based. So that's really great. So for Hyperledger, it is, correct me if I'm wrong, fully a permissioned blockchain, right? Or is there like a permissionless version? And is there plans to have it have interoperability with permissionless blockchains?
Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, we have several DLTs that are part of our ecosystem. Some of them have different capabilities because each one was developed by a group of developers or companies coming together and say, we want to build a thing because it's missing and we need it to do this or that. And we want to build it together so that it can be neutral and not depend on any one organization. So, so Fabric is permissioned. You can't use Fabric publicly, but we do have Hyperledger Besu, which is an EVM. It can be used permissioned or public as well.
Got it. And the Besu, if I'm saying that right, does that have a native token? Or it sounds like it's based on the Ethereum blockchain. Does it have a native token?
So there is no necessarily like a native token for Besu, but you can use, if you want to use it publicly, you can then decide what you want to use given any of the ERC tokens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And you mentioned interoperability earlier. So we have a couple of projects that focus on that as well. So Hyperledger Cacti is a project that enables the communication and transfer of assets between two different ledgers. So that's being, and the team is constantly working to add new ledgers that are supported by Cacti. Hyperledger Firefly also is another project, another code base within our family that's also focused on interoperability as well, led by the Kaleido team.
Wow, there's so many different branches off this Hyperledger tree, which is great. So let's say mock scenario, I'm Apple as a company. I can use these different Hyperledger products in different aspects, right? It may be the permission for more internal items, the Besu for maybe a more public interface, and then the other ones you have as well. I can essentially do that.
So
right?
So for example, let's say Apple, like many were doing last year, wanted to create an NFT marketplace. You could leverage Hyperledger Besu to do that. That exists. There's examples of that. We have Palm NFT, which had many significant trades and some big name artists that had their art displayed on the Palm NFT marketplace. So Apple could create their NFT marketplace with Besu, but maybe, for example, Apple has its whole supply chain for how they are producing their phones, computers, the microchip supply chain for the whatever, everything that goes into a phone or a computer, right? They've got a whole system of different companies that they work with along that value chain, and they could use Hyperledger Fabric to build a supply chain DLT that helps them with the tracking of those products along that value chain, or with the trade finance at the various aspects of the supply chain as well. So there's Walmart built something like that. Circular has done something similar for minerals coming from Rwanda. I think it was tungsten mineral, the mineral supply chain, tracking it for sustainability purposes to ensure that it's coming from mines that are, I guess better, of higher quality than other mines. Circular has also done that with coffee as well. So there's sustainability aspect. There's business goals you can achieve, there's sustainability goals you can achieve, by using DLT in your value chain.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I wonder if we can dive a bit into permission versus permissionless, because I think this is still a fairly new concept to a lot of folks, even some of my listeners and viewers, and that the future is going to be a combination of both, right? You're going to have companies using the permission blockchain, kind of private, but also the permissionless for different, as you rightfully outline, different use cases. tell us about the difference and the ecosystem, having both moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I love that you say that, because I think for a while there, nobody wanted to say that or felt comfortable saying that. I think there was, there was a lot of maximalists, right? That we're going to be all public all the way. And I'm sure there's many of your listeners that are there, and, maybe we will get there. It would be amazing if we got there one day. We are in no way, trying to influence it in one way or another. Our goal is to make it work for people today, right? And our viewpoint has always been from the very beginning that there won't be one blockchain to rule them all. We are going to live in a multiverse of blockchains. And it's a spectrum, right? That there's going to be uses where it's public is you can go fully public. It makes sense. It's safe, easy to use. And there's going to be uses where you just need more control. Because, just to illustrate the differences, right? Like permissioned means that not only, because I think people mostly view it from the perspective of viewing transactions, right? That, public means I can see all the transactions, right? And private means I can't see all the transactions. And yes, that's true. But what's actually, I think, more important in a way is it's really about who's writing the ledger, right? That's what it's really, that's why, I would obviously not wanting people to see the transactions publicly is a big reason why people choose that as well. Sure. But, the main aspect is it's about the actors writing to the ledger. Who do you want actually being able to add information, add transactions to the ledger? And it's usually that control is necessary in certain situations. Like, for example, Apple. And if we're talking about Apple putting all of its suppliers, right, on one ledger, you can't have any random company that's not a supplier of Apple be on that ledger, right? So there's an aspect of control there. In addition, viewing transactions, you don't necessarily want one supplier to see how many transactions you're doing with another supplier, or how much, right? Or you don't want them the visibility of contracts to be available to competitors or just even peers, right? So those are the benefits of a private permission versus public. It's not like, and I get the whole, walled garden argument. Like, we don't want to promote that either. But there's just scenarios that today the technology just isn't at a place where you can do all this stuff publicly. And maybe we will get there. There's obviously tons of work being done with privacy and security and, with zero knowledge proofs. But we're not there today, and companies can't just wait around until that's figured out. Like, they need to participate and want to participate in this innovation and accelerate the innovation. And so we, again, like I said earlier, are there to help bridge that gap and get enterprises involved in this space.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. And, the privacy thing is a big thing for companies and banks and financial institutions, because you don't want all the people's private information out there. Even though you're cutting out a middleman, you're using the blockchain. Still, there's a need for privacy.
Right. And I mean, it's been demonstrated over and over that even with anonymous, the anonymity that you can have on a public chain, that things can be triangulated and you can still kind of determine someone's identity. And so I look forward to those problems being solved and us being able to do more, because that's just going to unlock more use cases, right? Once that's possible.
So tell me if I'm wrong here, but Hyperledger, well, let me rephrase that. What protocol does Hyperledger use? And I know there's different branches on this tree. So, many blockchains have specific protocols and, validators and nodes and so forth. Bitcoin blockchain is miners. So how does that structure work with the permission version even and the permissionless as far as protocol?
Yeah. So depending on which one you're using, these are, it's not, they are their own independent protocols, right? They're not leveraging anything out there from the public, like, Paxos or others, except for Besu, which is coming from the Ethereum community. So, it originated from, was built by Consensus. It was part of their, enterprise offering that they had, and is one of the few clients that the Ethereum blockchain has. So Besu has that origin story. The others are essentially built from scratch. And so in terms of mining and Consensus, it just works differently in a permission network. That's something that is, you have different kinds of consensus mechanisms that you can use. Like with Fabric, there's a couple that you can choose from. Kafka, BFT, but that is dependent upon the actors in the network and the consortium that's built, right. And the rules that they decide on, right? So sure, yeah. One thing that maybe people don't realize that's different from public chains, right? There is like one public Ethereum, right? It's a chain that's going along. There are thousands of Fabric networks. They don't talk to each other. Oh, wow. There are thousands. So when you use Fabric or you use Sawtooth or Iroha or to build something, you are building something that's independent. Mm-hmm. So because it's purpose built for a specific use case, right? Sure. Going back to the Apple supply chain use case example, right? It's built for that closed network of participants. That's a fake example. Okay, I keep bringing it back. Yeah. That's a hypothetical example, but there is a real example of the Walmart Food Trust, right? Which is basically the same example, just Walmart with its suppliers, all on a Hyperledger Fabric network. So the Apple hypothetical, right, supply chain network can't talk to the Walmart, right, food supply chain network, right? They are independent consortia that were built, but that I think will change. We have, as I mentioned earlier, Hyperledger Cacti, which is one of our tools that helps ledgers talk to each other and speak to each other. And so the goal being that eventually if networks do need to connect to each other, that is possible, right? But that's a big difference between, public and permissionless. In public, there's one chain, whereas in permissioned, every project is its own, existing network.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that makes sense. For example, JPMorgan and IBM were like, okay, let's use this aspect of Hyperledger. That's between the two of them. No one else would know necessarily. They come to the agreement and how that's set up and running and their transactions and so forth.
Right. But I do think more and more those things are going to interconnect because, like I said, we have always, from the very beginning, hoped that there would be interoperability. And I think, in the beginning, there wasn't a path to that yet. And now I think we've advanced over the last 7 years where there's not only a path, there's actual tools that you can use. This can be done. So, it's been implemented in a variety of situations. One that I can highlight that might be of interest is a test last year that the Banque de France did with their CBDC research. They tested using Hyperledger Fabric, using that ledger and transferring assets from a Hyperledger Fabric ledger to a Corda ledger. And that was built on Corda. And they used Hyperledger Cacti to do that. So I think, we'll start to see more and more things like that because people, want to exchange assets. That's really what it's all about.
Sure. So as far as use cases, certainly tokenization of any asset, right? You mentioned CBDCs, stable coins as well. Can folks do NFTs, I'm assuming, and tokenize bonds, stocks, or all those,
yeah, absolutely. So there's Toko, which was an example built by DLA Piper. They have a tokenized platform that uses Hyperledger Fabric along with Hedera to essentially the ability to tokenize securities, art and media, real estate, and that's fully launched and in production and live. Yeah.
Very cool.
Another one, because I had read that you have an interest in sustainability. And so Project Genesis was an experimentation done with BIS. This is the Bank of International Settlements. It was done with the Hong Kong Innovation Center, where they developed a platform on tokenizing green bonds. Where they used Hyperledger Besu to have the origination, subscription, settlement, and secondary trading of green bonds. And so that's really exciting to me, is how we can, there's examples in our community. We have a climate action special interest group. We have a number of special interest groups along different industries. Our climate action special interest group has been really, really active in identifying use cases for how our technologies can be used for carbon emissions tracking. And so there's just, you can use, it's a ledger, right? You can use it for anything. And so there's lots of exciting use cases like that.
Very cool. And a while back, I read on Amazon's website under their Amazon Managed Blockchain Solutions Services page, they mentioned Ethereum, and then I saw Hyperledger. So tell us about that, and what can folks do going through Amazon?
Yeah, so the DLTs that are part of Hyperledger Foundation are you have to have some experience using it to really build it. It's not easy to build from necessarily day one. And so, of course, there's a lot of business that's been built around that, right? So we have a vendor directory that's full of companies that can help you build on Fabric, on Besu, on Sawtooth, Iroha, everything that we have within our code bases. We also have certified service providers. So that's what Amazon, the Amazon Managed Blockchain Service is what it's called. That's what they're offering to help with. So if anyone wants to build a use case that leverages, that requires the capabilities of Fabric, or it needs to be a permission use case, Amazon has designed an easy way to start and deploy Fabric.
That's great.
They're not the only ones. IBM has done that, Microsoft has done that, and other companies have built solutions on top that make it easy for you to get started and build the project.
Got it. And then let's say I'm a business, let's say I'm Tim Cook from Apple watching this podcast. I'm listening to this podcast, and I'm like, all right, I want to start leveraging Hyperledger. Is it a paid service, that they go through the foundation to get all these things up and running?
No. So we are a nonprofit. Everything that we do is really there to build the community. We are a membership-based organization. So what funds our operations are members joining people, organizations, companies that are using our technologies. They're building their businesses on top of it, and therefore want to see the stability, longevity of that technology, right? And we manage the health of the community, help make sure that it's continuing to operate. And the reason why that's valued is, this is our ethos of open source overall, right? That we are a neutral organization where this technology can be housed, that isn't dependent on any one company's future. And we've seen how much certain networks go up and go down. Companies are they are here today, gone tomorrow. The advantage of contributing your code base to Hyperledger Foundation is that our job is to make sure that the contributors are to diversify the contributors, so to bring new contributors, get people involved, so that it can be something that businesses can count on, right? So,
sure.
Big businesses are building, like I said, production networks on top of our technologies. Governments are have been doing it. The British Columbia government has done such incredible work around digital identity using our technologies, Indy and Aries, which I hadn't mentioned yet. Those are digital identity focused technologies. And they trust open source because it isn't dependent on any one organization, because it's neutral. And we have a whole set of governance around how we manage the community and manage the code base. So that's the value of using open source technologies. And of course, that doesn't preclude from anyone building their products and services on top of it. That's, it's not taking away anyone's, secret sauce. What we do is we house and manage what is the core technology that is not differentiating, and take away that investment of resources that companies need to put into that, right? Yeah. And instead they can focus on the higher value products and services that go on top of that's more differentiating, right? And that's where our members and our ecosystem compete.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And it makes sense to your point, like to have all these companies, some of the biggest companies in the world, to come together and have a neutral playground, so to speak, and folks back to foundation, but they're building their own things on proprietary, setups, DLTs, and so forth.
Well, you don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? Sure. So compete where the competition is, differentiate where you have a true value add. And so that's really what we offer. Don't spend your resources on where you don't need to.
For sure. Now you mentioned, the EVM or the Ethereum blockchain, and Besu, is that the one that's based?
Yeah, BESU. It's a Japanese word. I think it means flower, or
okay.
I think. I'm not totally sure now.
Are there plans to integrate other or build other products, with other blockchains? Whether you mentioned like one customer was using Hedera, we plan to integrate Hedera or Avalanche or whatever else. Are there plans?
Yeah. So, what what we do is we bring in those technologies that will facilitate that,
Mm.
right? So, the beauty of our point of view is we get to watch the magic happen of people taking a Hyperledger code base and doing what they want with it and building it for novel use cases. I mean, we have a use case tracker on our website with, tons of examples of what is being built out there. And it's happening more and more with a lot of different networks. So we have a project called Hyperledger Solang. It's an EVM compiler, a Solidity compiler, so that EVM developers can participate in the Solana ecosystem. So there's so many cool things that are being done like that. A lot of these new projects that are coming in, they come in from Hyperledger Labs. So it's where we sort of incubate new projects, like help a group of developers that are working on something that they've identified a need for. Like that was obviously a need, right? There was, EVM developers, they want to participate, they couldn't. There wasn't a way to do that. So a group of people created that, contributed to the foundation so that anyone can use it. And so now that can be leveraged by anyone that wants to do that. And so that's what's really cool is we just get to talk about, share, and promote what everyone's doing. We don't actually build anything ourselves.
Sure.
We are, facilitating that to be done in the ecosystem.
That makes sense. And on that note, what's on the remainder of your 2023 roadmap? Anything you can highlight?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. One thing we've really expanded in the last year are our workshops. So we've actually just announced an upcoming workshop, and we have a lot of recordings of previous ones. So I'll mention some of those too. But we have one called How to Create a Currency Management Application and Deploy on Hyperledger Fabric Network. So it's essentially like how to do a CBDC on Fabric.
Oh, sure.
This is from the team. The people running it are from the team who worked on that Banque de France example of their CBDC research. So, if you're interested in learning how to do this, it's free, and it's hands-on. Like it's several hours, really getting into the step-by-step of how to do it. We have previous workshops on CBDCs, on our digital identity technologies of how to use Indy and Aries and Ursa for digital identity uses and applications. Bevel, which is a project that helps facilitate launching networks. And so we have a workshop on that. So there's a ton of information on our website that you can use if you want to get started learning about how to use any one of these technologies. We also have a number of groups. So we have meetups all over the world. So if you're in a city, you can basically kind of Google Hyperledger X City Meetup and you'll find one. You can, meet people there, hear from speakers there. And then we have those special interest groups that I mentioned before. So the climate action one, supply chain and trade finance, financial markets, public sector. There's several. And then another way to kind of get involved and interact is really, I would say, check out our YouTube page. We have so many videos that relate to, I'm sure you can find something related to what you want to do. Because our technologies are being used in every industry. And so that's somewhere I would point someone to if they're just kind of wanting to browse and peruse and kind of or dive in. there's different lengths of workshops there.
So, question for you regarding the broader crypto ecosystem and market, and as it relates to regulations. Obviously, Hyperledger doesn't have a token or anything along those lines, but you do integrate certain blockchains. We mentioned Ethereum, Solana, and so forth. Are you guys concerned or focused at all on what's happening in the broader crypto ecosystem with regulations and all the things that are happening in the US?
Yeah. Luckily I'm not concerned in like whether I'll have, my life savings or not. But it certainly has a huge impact on our community because whatever's happening in the crypto space in regulation, first of all, it's DLT applies to everything, right? Public or permission, it's all DLTs.
Sure.
And so when it comes to regulation, there isn't necessarily distinctions between that, right? Of what kind. So that certainly can impact our ecosystem as well. It depends on who's getting involved, who's putting resources into building, can certainly be affected about what's happening in the crypto world. So yeah, we definitely pay close attention, and really, want to connect with and support projects that are really trying to provide value to the overall ecosystem of like building on distributed ledgers.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any thoughts on the SEC Ripple XRP ruling? The majority of the industry is saying that's a big win for the market. Obviously, we don't have comprehensive regulations from Congresses yet, but some clarity from the courts. And it seems this is where things are playing out right now, in that tokens themselves are not intrinsically securities, but rather it's how it's packaged. Going back to the Howey test of it wasn't the oranges or the orange growth, but rather how did Howey package his investment company?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's, I can't really comment on like what happened with Ripple, what they did or didn't do, right? Like, but it is definitely always very useful to have clarification on how government, right, or how regulators are defining tokens, defining securities, and how it's being used. I've personally participated from the very beginning in an organization called Global Digital Finance. They've actually been acquired by GBBC, the Global Business Blockchain Consortium, last year. And, they've been working on token taxonomies. I helped out with the first one and was participating in that as well in some meetings to define, what is a token? What are we talking about? What are the various types? What are the ways it is being used or could be used, right? We're at the forefront of a industry defining mechanisms, right? Yeah. These mechanisms didn't exist, and we are defining them. It's a really unique place in history to be in, and I think everyone recognizes it and is really wanting to make sure that there's just clarity and there's just agreement. Because anytime there isn't, that just creates problems and issues and for everyone, really, right? Both government and anyone in this space. So I think that's always helpful.
Yeah, and especially in the direction we're headed to, it seems like everything is going to be running on the blockchain for the most part. And you mentioned earlier, it's going to be a multi-chain world, and it's going to be different blockchains, permissionless, different companies using it for different use cases, but a lot of tokenization, and that's the future.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this past year, there's been, and for many years, really, there's been, banks have been involved in working on different projects and experimentations with using Hyperledger Fabric or using Hyperledger Besu to tokenize different kinds of assets. Last year, Goldman Sachs did $100 million digital bond with the European Investment Bank, and I think a couple other banks, all on Hyperledger technology. There's Santander, JPMorgan. The banks have been involved in exploring how to use this technology for a long time, and in many ways are waiting for more clarity on how and when they can, and making sure that they'll be able to use it appropriately according to regulators. But we've been seeing a huge influx from financial institutions, more recently, with the whole increase in interest of CBDCs across various jurisdictions. Just this past June, the Central Bank of Brazil announcing that it's going to build a CBDC on Hyperledger Besu. And we already have Nigeria. We launched their CBDC on Hyperledger Fabric. Wow. Norway is using Besu. France is experimenting with Fabric and Cacti. The Eastern Caribbean use Fabric. In Asia, they've experimented with both Fabric and Besu. So there's just, there's a lot that's going on, a lot that's been happening, especially in the financial space in the last couple of years. And I think we'll see a lot more of that continue.
Yeah, that's exciting. And Hyperledger seems to be getting a lot of adoption, the different products that you guys offer, or the different branches on the tree.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. And obviously some of the biggest institutions in the world. So really excited to see as things continue. But I know we're up on time, so I have some wrap-up questions here for you. If you could create your own metaverse, what would the theme be?
So I thought about this, and, I think, to me, this is a very personal answer.
Sure.
To me, what I find, a lot of the problems in the world come from us not having a very tangible experience of the negative externalities of what we do, right? For example, it's like really easy to pollute if you don't know where you're polluting, right? If you don't see the end, right? We don't see the where the trash goes, or we don't see how the people who are making our clothes or making our products and the lives that they live, right? So I would create a multiverse where we remove that obscurity. And where there's more visibility into anything that you would do in that multiverse, you would see the full impact of it from start to finish, and have it feel fit. I think it would change completely how you engage in everything, right? If you really saw what it is that the impact of how you live, what you eat, what you buy, what you do has.
Yeah, I think incredible education tool, and like something to bring self-awareness, as to your point, personal responsibility, your actions, what are you doing, and environment around you, society. So that's a great idea. Also got rapid fire questions for you. Favorite food?
I'll say, just because it's summer, corn. I love sweet corn.
Favorite musician or band?
Oh, that's really hard. Rapid fire. Okay. Bob Dylan.
Favorite movie?
Contact. I love Contact.
Oh yeah. Favorite.
I watched that a bunch of times. Favorite book? That's really hard to pick as well. I will pick a recent book that I read, and I'm forgetting the title now. Winners Take All. I think everybody should read this book. Everybody. It's by Anand Giridharadas. And it's kind of actually what I talked about with my multiverse. It's helping you see like what the true motivations are about what's happening in our global system.
And when you're not working at Hyperledger, what are you doing for fun as a hobby?
I guess this isn't very original, but I do love to travel. I speak a lot of different languages. I've lived in different parts of the world. I feel very at home in different regions of the world, and I just love the humility it gives me to show me how there's other people out there living differently than I am and have completely different paradigms and perspectives. I think that's just it's really enriching. So I love that.
Awesome. Karen, pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for all the information, and certainly would like to have you back on as things progress with Hyperledger, but thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. It was a pleasure.